friendly horror narrator Danielson is here to read you stories about creepy neighbors.
I used to live in an apartment complex on the first floor. I had one person right next door, we'll call him Joe, and two more neighbors adjacent. I met my next-door neighbor when he knocked on my door as the sun was setting. He was plump, brown hair with a bowl cut, glasses, and a button-down shirt. He had told me that he had been knocking on doors, asking if someone could babysit his dog for the weekend, since he was, allegedly, being called away for a last-minute trip. I agreed to watch his dog, and only thinking of possible problems that might arise with his dog, I asked for his number, stating just in case. That was a major mistake. I didn't realize it then, obviously. I was just trying to be a good neighbor. We had a short conversation about my love of video games and playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it seemed like we had mutual interests. I was just being friendly, nothing more. My wedding ring was on, and I made sure to brush my hand across my face to make sure he could see. My husband was deployed at the time. I didn't think anything of it. Joe came back Monday morning, and I returned his key. I hadn't asked for money, but he offered to pay me back in another way. Apparently, his office was having an escape the room event, and he was allowed to bring a friend. I agreed because why not? He seemed like a cool person, cool enough to potentially become a new friend. When the day came, I wasn't feeling very well. I was cuddling on the couch wrapped in blankets with my sweet little cockapoo named Cortana. I was sick and hadn't been able to make it to work that day, so I sent Joe a text letting him know that I wouldn't be able to make it and not to worry about paying me back. Okay, Joe replied. I didn't respond. I fell asleep. I started getting text messages from him over the next several weeks, but the context didn't add up until the very end. He texted me asking me why I hadn't invited him to play D&D. How did he know I was currently playing? My only explanation was that he must have heard me talking about it out in the hallway as I was leaving with my friend. Things started getting a little strange. Just beyond his door was a nice-sized patch of grass where I usually took Cortana out to potty. She's a mild-mannered dog, usually, sniffing everything on the ground, and never bothering to look up when she's exploring or focused on going potty. Suddenly, she would turn towards the window with the blinds closed all the way and started barking hysterically. I was embarrassed. Since when did Cortana act like that? I would pull her and command her to hush, but to no avail. Every day I went back to that patch of grass in the afternoon, she would constantly bark to that window like a maniac. I eventually started taking her somewhere else to see if it would change, and it did. I went back after about a week and found that the blinds were pulled all the way to the top. The window opened, and Joe popped his torso all the way out, stretching his arms to meet the sky. My first thought was, who does that? I said an awkward hello and hurried Cortana along and back to our apartment. Someone began to knock on my door every other day. I became deadly quiet and tiptoed to the door to see that it was Joe, standing there, peering intently through the peephole. I didn't open the door. It happened again 3 more times, and each time the house became quiet. Some time went by, and I received a text message from Joe offering to take me out to dinner. I was perplexed, staring at the message and not knowing what to say. Not even 3 minutes went by, and he sent me another message. "I'm just trying to be friendly after you ditched me last. Sorry for being friendly." I should have taken a picture of my face, because the shock must have been so great that Cortana sat up and stared at me. Let's be clear, I'm kind of a busy woman. I have a lot going on in my life. I don't text people back immediately. I was pretty freaked out by that point and decided to call my mom. I felt unsafe in my own home at that point. What if this dude decided to try and break into my apartment and attack me? All because I ditched him and felt too sick to go to an escape the room event? My mom said to let him know very firmly that my husband wouldn't appreciate me having dinner with another man, and that his behavior was highly inappropriate. For some reason, it took me mentioning my husband for Joe to back off. Not me ignoring him or avoiding him, or practically running to my car when I heard his door open. Even after that, Cortana would still turn to the window with the blinds and growl. I eventually moved out and never heard from Joe again.
Neighbors from Hell by Mark Lord.
I'm a foreign exchange student studying in a small town in Germany. At the time this particular event happened, however, I was still living in Berlin. I lived in an older apartment with an older lady who rented the unit to me. The kitchen connected the two apartments that she owns, so we technically live in a separate unit, but we still share the kitchen. The star of our story, however, is not the lady. She is nice. I still talk to her sometimes. The apartment building is 5 stories high with a staircase and no elevator. We live in the 2nd story. The lady who rented the unit to me has always had a problem with the neighbors right downstairs because they were always very noisy. They fought a lot, and when they were on their balcony it always smelled heavily of nicotine smoke. The neighbors downstairs were an older couple, probably in their late 50s or early 60s. I didn't know much about them, except for their phone number and their names, which the landlady scribbled on a piece of paper to me in case they got too loud so I could call them. Turns out I never needed the number to get to know them. One afternoon as I was cooking, the doorbell in the landlady's apartment rang, but she was out. And not long after that, it rang on my side. So I thought it must be her guest trying to reach out or something, so I looked through the peephole, and there stood some older lady. So I thought it must be the landlady's old friend. I opened the door, and to my surprise, there stood the said lady without any pants. As in, she was with a shirt, but was in her underwear. Now, at this point, I was only in Germany for a couple of months, so I wasn't really sure if that was normal, and my German also was not that very good, so I couldn't really ask her if it was or wasn't. This lady was mumbling something that I could barely understand, but since she rang the bell on the landlady's side first, I assumed she was looking for the landlady, and I tried telling her with the best German I could manage that the landlady was out and would probably not be back until later. But this lady still stood there mumbling something to me. As I said, I really could not understand her, so I just had to shake my head apologetically, and I smiled. When she didn't get the response she obviously wanted, she began gesturing me to come with her, like she wanted to show me something. I quickly turned off the stove and followed her downstairs after grabbing my keys. She then started to ring a bell on the door right below us. "Oh, so this is the neighbor?" I said to myself, but in English. Then came another wave of shock, because after she repeatedly rang the bell, a man came to the door with no piece of clothing on except for his socks. I tried very hard not to make my weirded out face very apparent, because I wasn't sure about German customs, like I said. Yet at that point, I didn't want to be rude. I assumed it was her husband at the time. She gestured me to come in. I was starting to wonder what her actual intention was calling me all the way down there. I had thought it was something important for the landlady, but she just offered me something to drink, so I declined. But she insisted on getting me water anyway and walked into the kitchen. Now, I was still standing near the front door when this man began staring at me top to bottom. To be honest, he looked kind of drunk, and right at that moment, I remembered how the landlady used to tell me that all they did was fight and get drunk. So I just smiled at him and stood there awkwardly, but he decided to suddenly be friendly, because he just kind of grabbed my shoulder and dragged me inside of the house to show me different rooms and the balcony and their small garden and everything. I mean, the house itself was beautiful, such a contrast to the people living in it. It was uncomfortable to say the least, because he was very much naked and staying at a very close proximity to me. He kept his arm around my shoulders, and he was just looking at my face so closely. I could feel his breath on my skin. He then asked me if I had a beautiful garden like they did. I just said yes, and kind of laughed awkwardly. Thank God the wife came out from the kitchen at this point, and then started shouting at him for doing what he was doing. She told him that it was no way to treat a guest, or so I surmised from my rudimentary German at the time, and she handed me my glass of water, all the while still wearing no pants. I never drank the water, and quickly excused myself, saying that I needed to check my cooking upstairs. After some debate, I got out of the house, but the lady was still holding me at the door, pleading that I could stay a while and sit at the garden with her. Yeah, right. I was ready to come up with more excuses before someone came through the front door of the building and interrupted us. It was the young man that lived 2 stories above us. Apparently he had just gotten back from grocery shopping, and somehow he dealt with them and told me to get back upstairs while he did so. So I went and waited upstairs to thank him. When he was done talking to them after about 2 minutes, he came upstairs to ask if I was all right, and told me not to get mixed up with those folks, because they were apparently known to be problematic. He could have said that again. So yeah, he saved my day, and I thanked him for it. After that experience, I just kind of hurried my way up to my apartment every time I got back from somewhere, so I didn't have to run into that couple.
Creepy Neighbor by Goddess of War Wisdom.
I used to go on night walks, but I don't anymore, because summer night seems to bring out all the creeps. I was on my way home one night, and this dude was in his backyard, leaning on his wall having a smoke. I thought nothing of it, and started to walk past. By the way, I always have my box cutter in my shoe for protection, because pockets are either fake, non-existent, or too small on girl jeans. He called out to me, "Hey, pretty, come here. Hey, beautiful, wanna join my pool party?" I don't know if he even had a pool, but there was definitely no party. I walked about a block away from him and fixed my shoe in case I needed to run and pull out my blade too. He didn't follow me this time. I went out on several more walks, walking on the opposite side of the road to go home, but he was never in his backyard again until one night when I was walking home from a night walk. He was there in his backyard at the wall, calling out to me and telling me to go to him and the typical creep stuff. I had a feeling that I had to pull out my blade immediately, so I did, and then I heard shoes hit the ground. I looked back, Not on purpose, I was thinking, and saw he had jumped the wall and was walking towards me. I was on the other side of the road, so I booked it and took off running through my apartment complex around my apartment. I hopped the wall into my backyard. My backyard has a sliding screen door and then a sliding glass door. Only the glass door can lock and part of the screen, the part that doesn't slide off. We have to get management to fix it, but it's angled against the wall out of the way. This is important. I tried the glass door, but apparently when I was out, my mom had locked it. She knows I go out to walk at night. She doesn't want me in the apartment at all. The instant I found the glass door locked, I slid under the screen angled against the wall in just enough time. A few seconds later, my creepy neighbor rounded the corner, and I could see through the screen. If I looked really hard, I saw him walk past my hiding spot and back down the street towards his house. I started calling and texting my mom to let me inside. About an hour or two later, when my phone was about to die, she finally unlocked the door and opened it because she didn't see me because I was still hiding under the screen. I came out from under and she asked me why I was hiding. I told her why, and she called me a bunch of names before telling me I should have just let him kill me. Frustrated at my mom and scared, I texted my friend. Not my friend anymore, not absolutely because of this incident and how it happened to be a boy. I just told him what happened, all the creepy things that had been happening with this guy, and he had the audacity to text me back, "Well, if you dressed differently or took a different route home, this kind of stuff wouldn't happen. It never happens to me because I'm smarter than that." For the record, I always wear all black, a t-shirt or a long-sleeved shirt with pants or leggings, and when I need to do laundry, shorts and leggings, and I always wear a jacket. And this so-called friend had never seen me in shorts. I wear them to the laundromat room and back, and that's it.
Creepy Guy in the Neighborhood by Rob the Saboteur.
Just recently, about 5 months ago, my family moved into the house we're in right now after doing renovations on it for 2 to 3 years straight. The house is in a low middle-class neighborhood and needed a lot of work. After finally finishing it, we moved in ASAP and got settled. It's very cozy, and the neighbors are supportive and nice. However, about a week or two ago of being in the house, at about 5 in the morning, I woke up and decided to get a glass of water before getting ready for school. To my surprise, I looked out of the kitchen window into the front yard and saw a man walking back and forth under the streetlight. Creepy as hell, yeah, but after about only a few seconds of watching him, he looked up and continued down the road. I didn't think much of it at this point. May have been someone walking home or to another location, so I dropped it, didn't tell my parents or friends or anything. Fast forward to the end of June. I woke up at about 3 in the morning to my dogs going absolutely ballistic. I scrambled to get them to calm down, since I didn't want my dad or mom waking up and getting mad about it. However, I looked out the window and noticed the same damn dude standing there under the light, staring at or into our house. This unnerved me greatly, and I turned the lights on, and almost immediately the dude walked away. My dogs finally chilled out, and I woke my dad up and told him all about it. My dad didn't seem to really worry too much about it, and told me to tell him if I saw him again. I agreed to this and went back to bed. About a week ago, I was unloading a storage unit pod at our backyard. I was home alone, and it was rather late. However, I wanted to retrieve my guitar case before I lent my guitar to a friend. My dogs started barking like crazy again, and I immediately went to check on what they were barking at. And lo and behold, there was the dude again, in the same spot, staring at or into our house. At this point, I had 3 choices: call the cops, call my dad, or be a tough guy. My stupid ass chose option C, grabbed a baseball bat from my room, and walked outside. The moment I opened the door, the creeper began to walk away. I screamed at him, "Hey, get back here, jerk." And in response, he ran. Once my folks got home, I got a major earful, and rightly so. My dad and mom called the cops, and the cops did the best they could with what little information I gave them. They simply told us to call again if anything else happened, and went on their way. Now, last night, I was getting home with my dad and mom and sister after a night with some family friends. As we pulled up into our driveway, there he was. However, this time he was in our yard. The moment the headlights shined on him, he ran down the road. My dad cursed, parked the car, got out his gun, and stared at this guy as he ran away. My sister and mom and I went inside and immediately called the cops again. We didn't know what happened after we went inside, but according to my dad, the man turned around and stared back at him a while before running off again. I don't know if this creepy neighbor will be back and how long he's been doing this, but I hope nothing spirals out of control.